Imagine walking through a peaceful field, only to hear ghostly war cries, see phantom soldiers, and feel the chill of history's bloodiest clashes. Across the UK, haunted battlefields hold the restless spirits of fallen warriors, their tragic last moments replaying for eternity. From Culloden's massacred Highlanders to Hastings' doomed Saxon king, these cursed grounds are alive with paranormal activity. Dare you step onto these haunted battlegrounds, where the past never dies? Stay tuned, we're counting down the 10 most haunted battlefields in the UK where ghosts still march, scream, and remember. Want to explore more haunted battlefields with us? Smash that subscribe button. Let's hit 1K subs by September 2025 and unlock even darker mysteries. 1 Culloden Moor, Scotland. Culloden Moor, near Inverness in Scotland, is one of the most haunted battlefields in the UK. It was here, on April 16, 1746, that the last major battle on British soil took place. The Jacobite uprising, led by Bonnie Prince Charlie, was crushed by the British government forces in less than an hour. The battle was brutal, over 1,500 Jacobites were killed, many slaughtered as they lay wounded. The moor itself is a bleak, open place, and many visitors report feeling an overwhelming sadness as soon as they step onto the field. People have claimed to see ghostly Highlanders wandering the moor, their faces filled with despair. Some say they hear the distant sounds of battle, clashing swords, gunfire, and the screams of dying men. Others report seeing shadowy figures in tartan, disappearing into the mist. One of the most famous ghosts is that of a tall, red-haired Highlander, believed to be a clansman who died defending his cause. Witnesses say he appears suddenly, staring at them before vanishing into thin air. There are also stories of a ghostly drummer boy. Legend says he was just a child when he was killed, and on quiet nights, his drumming can still be heard, a sad and lonely sound echoing across the moor. Some visitors have even reported being touched by unseen hands or feeling an icy chill in certain spots, places where mass graves are believed to be. The Culloden Visitor Centre staff have also shared strange experiences. Doors open and close by themselves, and unexplained footsteps are heard when no one is around. Some say the spirits are restless because of the way the battle ended. Many Jacobites were denied proper burials, their bodies left where they fell. Even today, the moor holds a heavy, sorrowful energy, as if the land itself remembers the bloodshed. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, Culloden Moor has a presence that is hard to ignore. The stories of hauntings are so common that paranormal investigators often visit, hoping to capture evidence of the supernatural. For those who walk the battlefield at dusk, the feeling of being watched is unmistakable. The ghosts of Culloden may never find peace, their tragic end forever tied to the windswept moor where they met their fate. 2 Bosworth Field, Leicestershire. Bosworth Field, the site of one of England's most famous battles, is steeped in ghostly legends. It was here, on August 22, 1485, that King Richard III made his last stand against Henry Tudor's forces, losing both his crown and his life. The battle marked the end of the Plantagenet dynasty and the rise of the Tudors, but many believe the spirits of the fallen never truly left. Visitors to the quiet fields near Market Bosworth often report eerie encounters, as if the past refuses to fade away. One of the most common sightings is that of a spectral knight in dark armor, believed to be Richard III himself. Witnesses described seeing a shadowy figure on horseback, his face twisted in anguish, galloping across the battlefield before vanishing into the mist. Some claim to hear the clatter of hooves and the distant clash of swords, as though the battle is being fought again in some unseen realm. Others speak of ghostly soldiers in medieval garb, wandering as if lost, their faces filled with confusion and sorrow. Local legends tell of a phantom army marching silently at dusk, their banners tattered and their weapons rusted. There are stories of travelers who, on foggy evenings, have stumbled upon these ghostly soldiers only for them to disappear moments later. One particularly chilling account comes from a farmer who, while working near the battlefield, saw a group of armored men standing motionless in his field. When he approached, they simply faded away, leaving behind only a cold breeze. The nearby villages also have their share of hauntings. In the town of Sutton Cheney, it's said that the churchyard is haunted by the ghost of a wounded soldier who crawled there after the battle, only to die at the gates. People have reported seeing his bloodied figure near the church walls, clutching his side as if in terrible pain. Others claim to hear faint moans and whispers in the dead of night, as if the dying still linger, unable to move on. Even archaeologists working at Bosworth Field have experienced strange phenomena. Some have spoken of tools moving on their own, sudden drops in temperature, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. The land itself seems to hold on to the violence of that fateful day, replaying it in whispers and shadows. Whether it's the restless spirit of Richard III or the countless unnamed soldiers who perished, Bosworth Field remains a place where history feels alive, and death is never far away. For those brave enough to visit after dark, the past may just reveal itself in ways that are impossible to ignore. 3. Edgehill, Warwickshire. Edgehill, the site of the first major battle of the English Civil War, is one of Britain's most famous haunted battlefields. On October 23, 1642, Royalist and Parliamentarian forces clashed in a brutal fight that left thousands dead. But what makes Edgehill truly unique is that, just weeks after the battle, locals began reporting something impossible: ghostly armies reenacting the fight in the night sky. These sightings were so widespread that even King Charles I sent investigators to confirm the stories. To this day, visitors and locals claim to witness spectral soldiers marching across the fields, their ghostly figures illuminated by an eerie, unnatural light. Some describe hearing the distant thunder of cannons, the clash of steel, and the screams of dying men, as if the battle is trapped in time. One of the most chilling accounts comes from World War II, when a group of soldiers stationed near Edgehill reported seeing two phantom armies fighting in the sky. They assumed it was a trick of the light, until they learned about the battlefield's dark history. The ghostly sightings aren't limited to the battlefield itself. Nearby roads have their own hauntings. Drivers passing through at night have reported nearly hitting soldiers in 17th-century uniforms, only for them to vanish seconds later. Others tell of a headless horseman, believed to be a fallen cavalry officer, who gallops along the old trails, his spectral horse leaving no hoofprints. In the village of Kyneton, just a few miles away, residents have heard the sound of marching feet and distant drumbeats, even when no one is there. Paranormal investigators who have visited Edgehill often record strange phenomena: sudden temperature drops, unexplained voices, and even ghostly figures caught on camera. Some believe the land itself is cursed, forever replaying the violence of that day. Others think the soldiers are trapped, unable to move on from their final moments. Whatever the truth, Edgehill remains a place where the past refuses to stay buried. On quiet nights, when the wind carries the faint echo of battle cries, it's easy to believe that the dead of Edgehill are still fighting their war, centuries after the last shot was fired. 4. Flaan Field, Northumberland. The quiet fields near Branxton in Northumberland hold a dark secret. They were once the stage for one of Britain's bloodiest medieval battles. On September 9, 1513, the Battle of Flodden saw King James IV of Scotland and his army cut down by English forces in a brutal clash that left nearly 10,000 Scots dead, including the king himself. Today, locals and visitors claim the moor never forgot the slaughter, with ghostly apparitions and eerie phenomena still plaguing the landscape centuries later. Many who walk the battlefield at dusk report hearing strange, disembodied sounds, the clash of steel on steel, distant war cries, and most chilling of all, the agonized moans of dying men. Some visitors have described suddenly feeling overwhelming sadness or anger in certain spots, as if the land itself remembers where the worst fighting occurred. There are numerous accounts of people seeing spectral Highlanders wandering the fields, their ghostly forms sometimes so real-looking that walkers mistake them for reenactors, until they vanish before their eyes. One of the most persistent ghosts is said to be King James IV himself. Witnesses describe seeing a tall, regal figure in battered armor, his face a mask of sorrow, wandering near the monument that marks the battle site. Others claim to have encountered the ghost of Lady Heron, who according to legend betrayed the Scottish king, her pale figure weeping near the old church at Ford. Local farmers tell of finding their livestock agitated for no reason, especially around the anniversary of the battle, with animals refusing to enter certain fields where the fighting was thickest. The nearby village of Branxton has its own share of hauntings. Residents speak of hearing phantom bagpipes in the dead of night, playing a mournful tune that fades as suddenly as it begins. The old churchyard is said to be particularly active, with reports of shadowy figures seen between the graves and cold spots that move against the wind. Some believe these are the spirits of soldiers who were buried hastily in mass graves, never receiving proper funeral rites. Even skeptical visitors often leave Flaan Field with an unsettling feeling. The air seems heavier here, the silence more profound. Whether it's the sheer scale of the tragedy that occurred or something more supernatural, Flaan remains a place where the past feels uncomfortably close. On foggy autumn nights, when the mist rolls across the moor, it's easy to imagine the ghosts of 1513 still walking their final battlefield, trapped forever in their moment of defeat. The cries of Flaan may have faded from living memory, but if the stories are true, they still echo in whatever realm the dead inhabit. 5. Toten, Yorkshire. Few places in England hold as much lingering sorrow as the quiet fields near Toten, where the bloodiest battle ever fought on English soil took place. On March 29, 1461, during the Wars of the Roses, the Yorkist and Lancastrian armies clashed in a brutal snowstorm that turned into a massacre. By day's end, over 28,000 men lay dead in the frozen mud, their blood said to have stained the nearby River Cock red. Today, locals swear the battlefield never forgot that horror, with ghostly sightings and unexplained phenomena still haunting the area centuries later. Visitors to Toten often report an oppressive atmosphere, as if the weight of all those deaths still hangs over the landscape. Many describe sudden temperature drops, especially near the bridge where fleeing Lancastrians were cut down in such numbers that it became known as Bloody Meadow. Some have heard phantom screams and the sounds of steel clashing when no one else is around, the echoes of battle seeming to replay on the anniversary. There are accounts of people seeing shadowy figures in medieval armor standing motionless in the fields, only to vanish when approached. One of the most chilling tales comes from a group of archaeologists who excavated part of the battlefield. They reported tools going missing, strange whispers in their ears, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched. When they uncovered a mass grave, several team members claimed to see ghostly faces staring up at them from the dirt before disappearing. Local farmers tell similar stories, of finding their dogs whimpering for no reason near certain spots, or livestock refusing to graze in areas where the fighting was fiercest. The nearby village of Saxton has its own share of hauntings tied to the battle. The old church is said to be visited by the ghost of Lord Dacre, a Lancastrian commander killed by an arrow to the neck. Witnesses describe seeing his armored figure near the tomb where he was buried, his face frozen in surprise. Others report hearing marching footsteps in the churchyard at night, though no one is ever there. The most disturbing accounts come from people walking near Toten Hall, where some claim to have seen the apparition of a soldier missing his hands, likely one of the many maimed in the battle's aftermath. What makes Toten different from other haunted battlefields is the sheer intensity of the emotions people report feeling there. Visitors often describe sudden waves of fear, despair, or anger in certain spots, as if the land absorbed the terror of that day. Some paranormal investigators believe the extreme violence created a kind of spiritual scar that never healed. On snowy March nights, when the wind howls across the fields, locals say you can still hear the cries of the fallen, a grim reminder that some battles never truly end, even 5 centuries later. The dead of Toten may lie in their mass graves, but if the stories are true, their spirits remain trapped in their final, bloody moments. 6. Sedmore, Somerset. The misty marshes of Sedmore in Somerset hold dark secrets from one of England's last pitched battles. On July 6, 1685, the Duke of Monmouth's ill-fated rebellion against King James II came to a bloody end here, when his peasant army was ambushed and slaughtered by royal troops in the dead of night. Hundreds were cut down as they fled through the treacherous wetlands, their bodies left to sink into the boggy ground. To this day, locals claim the moor never forgot that night of betrayal and carnage, with ghostly screams and phantom soldiers still haunting the fog-shrouded battlefield. Visitors to Sedmore often report an unsettling atmosphere after dark, as if the land itself remembers the violence. Many describe hearing muffled shouts and musket fire echoing across the marshes, though no source can ever be found. Some have seen strange lights bobbing in the distance, like the lanterns of Monmouth's men trying to find their way through the darkness before the attack. There are accounts of shadowy figures in 17th century clothing emerging from the mist near the battle drain, the waterway that proved fatal to so many rebels trying to escape. One of the most persistent ghosts is said to be a headless horseman, believed to be one of Monmouth's officers executed after the battle. Witnesses describe hearing galloping hooves and seeing a spectral rider charging through the fields before vanishing near the spot known as Deadman's Lane. Local farmers tell of livestock panicking for no reason in certain areas, particularly around the anniversary of the battle. Some even claim to have found hoofprints leading into marshes that no living horse could have survived. The nearby village of Chedzoy has its own haunting tied to the battle. The old church is said to be visited by the ghost of a young drummer boy who was among the first killed in the surprise attack. Villagers report hearing phantom drum beats coming from the churchyard at night, slow and mournful as if keeping time for a funeral march. Others speak of a woman in a blood-stained dress seen weeping near the war memorial, possibly the spirit of one of the many local women who lost husbands and sons in the fighting. What makes Sedmore particularly eerie is how the landscape itself seems to conspire in the hauntings. The same thick mists that confused Monmouth's men still roll across the fields today, creating perfect conditions for ghostly apparitions. The peaty ground, which swallowed so many bodies, occasionally yields fragments of weapons and bones during dry summers, as if the moor refuses to let go of its dead. On still summer nights when the fog creeps in from the marshes, locals say you can sometimes hear the desperate whispers of Monmouth's men, still trying to find their way home over 3 centuries later. The rebellion may have lasted just a few weeks, but if the stories are true, its ghosts remain trapped forever in that final, bloody night on Sedmore. 7 Nazisby, Northamptonshire. The rolling fields of Nazisby in Northamptonshire appear peaceful today, but on June 14, 1645, they witnessed one of the most decisive battles of the English Civil War. Here, Oliver Cromwell's new model army crushed the royalist forces of King Charles I in a brutal engagement that changed the course of British history. Nearly 1,000 men died in just 3 hours of fighting, their blood soaking into the earth. Centuries later, locals and visitors claim the battlefield remains alive with ghostly activity, as if the trauma of that day imprinted itself permanently on the landscape. Those who walk the fields at dusk often report strange encounters. Many describe hearing the thunder of hooves and the clash of steel when no horses or reenactors are present. Some have witnessed full apparitions of cavalry charges materializing in the mist, only to disappear seconds later. The most common sighting is of a lone horseman in 17th century armor, believed to be the ghost of Sir Marmaduke Langdale, a royalist commander who barely escaped the slaughter. Witnesses say he appears along Stolby hedges, where the royalist forces made their doomed last stand, his spectral figure galloping frantically as if still trying to rally his troops. The nearby village of Nazisby has its own share of hauntings tied to the battle. The old church is said to be visited by the ghost of a Roundhead soldier, his face half blown away by musket fire. Villagers report hearing agonized moans coming from the churchyard at night, particularly around the anniversary of the battle. The thatched cottage that served as a field hospital still stands, and its owners speak of cold spots, phantom footsteps, and the occasional smell of blood and rotting flesh. Grim reminders of the suffering that occurred within its walls. What makes Nazisby particularly eerie is how specific the ghostly phenomena are to actual battle events. Archaeologists have noted that reports of supernatural activity cluster around documented areas of heavy fighting. The spot where Cromwell's cavalry broke through royalist lines is said to be especially active, with visitors reporting sudden feelings of panic and the sensation of being surrounded by unseen combatants. Local farmers tell of crops growing in strange patterns in certain fields, as if the ground still remembers where bodies fell. Even skeptical visitors often leave Nazisby with unsettling stories. Some report cameras malfunctioning near key battle landmarks, while others describe feeling watched from empty fields. The most chilling accounts come from those who visited after dark. Tales of shadowy figures moving between the hedgerows, disembodied screams, and the occasional glimpse of a tattered regimental banner fluttering where no wind blows. Whether these are ghosts or simply the imagination playing tricks, Nazisby remains a place where history feels uncomfortably close, and the line between past and present seems to blur in the twilight. The dead of England's Civil War may be long buried, but at Nazisby, it seems some are still fighting their last battle. 8 Bannockburn, Scotland. The fields near Stirling hold one of Scotland's most famous victories, and according to many, some of its most active ghosts. On June 23 to 24, 1314, Robert the Bruce's outnumbered Scottish forces defeated King Edward II English army in the Battle of Bannockburn, securing Scottish independence. While this was a moment of triumph for Scotland, the sheer brutality of the fighting, with thousands slaughtered in the marshes and burns, left a spiritual mark that many believe still lingers. Visitors to the quiet battlefield today often report eerie encounters that suggest the dead have not entirely moved on. Walk across Bannockburn Field at twilight, and you might hear what others have reported, the distant clang of swords, the thunder of charging horses, and war cries in both Scots and English rising from the ground itself. Some visitors describe seeing ghostly figures in medieval armor materializing among the trees, only to vanish when approached. The most common apparition is said to be a massive Highlander with a battle-axe, believed to be one of Bruce's fiercest warriors, who appears near the site of the English camp, still guarding against attack centuries after the battle ended. The nearby Bannockburn stream, which ran red with blood during the fighting, is a hotspot for paranormal activity. Locals tell of hearing splashing and screams coming from the water at night, though no one is there. Some dog walkers have reported their pets suddenly freezing in terror or barking at invisible figures along the banks. There are stories of a phantom English knight in full armor seen struggling in the deeper pools, perhaps one of the many who drowned when retreating across the treacherous terrain. The Rotunda, the modern visitor center at the battlefield, has its own share of unexplained occurrences. Staff report doors slamming by themselves, sudden cold drafts in sealed rooms, and the sound of marching feet in empty corridors. Some visitors claim to have captured ghostly figures in their photographs, particularly near the monument to Bruce's victory. Psychics who have visited suggest the land holds on to the intense emotions of that decisive battle, not just the Scottish triumph, but the terror and pain of the defeated English forces. What makes Bannockburn's hauntings unique is how they reflect both sides of the conflict. Unlike other battlefields where the ghosts seem stuck in their final moments of defeat, here both victors and vanquished appear to remain. On the anniversary of the battle, locals report especially intense activity, shadowy figures seen marching in formation, the smell of smoke and blood in the air, and an overwhelming sense that the land itself is replaying those two fateful days. Whether these are true spirits or just echoes of the past, Bannockburn remains a place where Scotland's proudest victory still seems vibrantly, hauntingly alive, and where the line between history and the supernatural grows strangely thin when the mist rolls in from the Highlands. 9 Marston Moor, Yorkshire. The vast plain of Marston Moor near York looks peaceful by day, but locals know better than to walk there after dark. On July 2, 1644, this quiet stretch of farmland witnessed the largest battle of the English Civil War, where 22,000 parliamentarians and Scottish Covenanters crushed Prince Rupert's royalist army in a single bloody evening. Nearly 4,000 men died in just 2 hours of fighting, their bodies left to rot in the summer heat. Today, visitors report ghostly encounters so vivid they seem to step right into the past when night falls on the moor. Many who visit the battlefield describe hearing phantom sounds that chill the blood, the thunder of cannon fire echoing from empty fields, the screams of wounded horses, and the clash of steel on steel. Some have seen glowing orbs floating where the front lines once stood, moving in formation as if marking the positions of long-dead regiments. The most common apparition is a group of spectral pikemen in tattered uniforms, marching silently across the moor before disappearing near the old oak tree that served as a landmark during the battle. Locals call them the Lost Company, believed to be royalist soldiers who became separated in the chaos and still search for their unit. The nearby road between Long Marston and Tockwith has gained a reputation as particularly haunted. Drivers report nearly hitting figures in 17th century dress who appear suddenly in their headlights, only to vanish moments later. One truck driver swore he saw an entire cavalry charge cross the road ahead of him, the spectral riders so detailed he could see the fear in their horses' eyes. Others tell of a weeping woman in a blue dress seen wandering near the battlefield's edge, thought to be the ghost of a royalist officer's wife who came searching for her husband's body and died of grief. What makes Marston Moor especially eerie is how the ghostly activity seems tied to specific events from the battle. The spot where Oliver Cromwell launched his decisive cavalry charge is said to be thick with paranormal energy. Visitors report sudden dizziness, the smell of gunpowder, and the overwhelming sensation of being surrounded by unseen riders. The drainage ditch where hundreds of royalists were slaughtered while fleeing. People avoid it after dark, claiming to hear desperate pleas for mercy rising from the ground. Even the old farmhouses nearby aren't spared. One family reported finding a fully armored spectral soldier standing in their kitchen before he faded away. Archaeologists working at Marston Moor have uncovered mass graves containing skeletons with horrific injuries matching historical accounts. Some admit to feeling watched while excavating, and tell of tools moving by themselves. On foggy summer nights when the moon is full, locals keep their windows closed against what they call the battle winds, strange gusts that carry whispers in 17th century English and the faint sound of drumbeats. Whether these phenomena are ghosts or just the land remembering its violent past, Marston Moor remains one of England's most haunted battlefields, where the dead seem determined to ensure their terrible sacrifice is never forgotten. The Civil War may have ended centuries ago, but on quiet nights, you can still hear its echoes in the rustling grass of this Yorkshire field. 10 Battle of Hastings, East Sussex. The quiet fields of battle in East Sussex hide one of England's most famous battlegrounds, the site where William the Conqueror defeated King Harold in 1066, changing the course of history. While Battle Abbey now stands on the hill where Harold fell, many believe the spirits of that bloody day never left. Visitors to the area often report eerie encounters that transport them back to the chaos of the Norman invasion, as if the land itself refuses to forget the violence that birthed a New England. Walk through the Abbey grounds at dusk, and you might experience what others have, the sudden sound of arrows whistling through the air, though no archers stand in the trees. Some visitors describe hearing war cries in Old English and Norman French rising from the earth, or catching glimpses of shadowy figures in chainmail moving through the mist. The most famous ghost is said to be King Harold himself, often spotted near the spot marked as his death place, clutching the phantom arrow that supposedly pierced his eye. Witnesses describe a tall, regal figure with a bloodied face, staring defiantly before vanishing into thin air. The nearby Senlac Hill, where the Saxon shield wall made its last stand, is particularly active with paranormal phenomena. People report feeling sudden pushes or tugs on their clothing, as if invisible hands are trying to drag them down. Others describe overwhelming smells of blood and sweat that come without warning, then disappear just as quickly. There are accounts of tourists capturing strange mists and unexplained lights in their photographs, especially near the Abbey's gatehouse. Some visitors have reported hearing the chilling sound of swords being drawn from invisible scabbards, followed by ghostly battle cries that seem to come from all directions at once. Local residents have their own stories about living near this haunted ground. Many tell of hearing marching footsteps on quiet nights, as if an army still patrols the area. Others speak of their pets behaving strangely, dogs growling at empty spaces or cats hissing at unseen presences. The road leading to the battlefield has gained a reputation for phantom hitchhikers, figures in period clothing who appear in car headlights before vanishing. One taxi driver reported picking up a blood-stained Saxon warrior who gave directions in Old English before disappearing from the back seat. What makes the Hastings hauntings unique is how they reflect both sides of the conflict equally. Unlike other battlefields where the ghost seems stuck in defeat, here both Norman and Saxon spirits appear locked in eternal combat. On the battle's anniversary in October, paranormal activity reportedly increases. Visitors describe seeing full apparitions of fighting warriors, hearing the clash of swords, and feeling intense emotions that don't belong to them. The Abbey's caretakers tell of doors slamming by themselves and candles relighting after being extinguished, as if unseen hands maintain vigil for the fallen. Whether these experiences are ghosts or simply the power of suggestion on historic ground, the Battle of Hastings site remains a place where the past feels uncomfortably alive. The Norman conquest happened nearly 1,000 years ago, but if the stories are true, some part of that fateful day remains trapped in the Sussex soil, replaying endlessly for those sensitive enough to notice. When the fog rolls in from the Channel and the Abbey bells toll, it's easy to imagine the ghosts of 1066 still fighting their world-changing battle in some shadowy realm just beyond our sight.